Imagine owning a fleet of vehicles, sleek sports cars, powerful yachts, and private jets. Each vehicle, though different in design and purpose, shares a fundamental characteristic, like the ability to move. This is the essence of object-oriented programming. In the world of software development, OOP, as it is fondly known, allows us to create modular, reusable, and efficient code by modeling real-world objects as software objects. We can use this to design complex systems with ease. So, in this video, we'll dive into a few pillars of OOP, like inheritance, polymorphism, encapsulation, and abstraction. We'll explore how these concepts are implemented in Python, JavaScript, and PHP side by side, using real-world analogies and practical code examples. So buckle up and let's embark on this journey, starting with simple classes. So, carrying on from our previous class, let's go ahead and create a few files that we will use for Python with .py, JavaScript with .js, and PHP with .php. From there, we can go ahead and open these files side by side so that we can easily navigate from one to the other. Awesome. Let's start with a simple class. A class is a blueprint, like we said. So taking an example, a class called dog in Python, we'll go ahead and use the class keyword. Make sure the name of the class is capitalized. And then we define the constructor. This is actually initiated each time we create an instance of this dog. This function is going to execute. So we define it, double underscore init, double underscore, and pass in a few parameters. The first parameter is usually the keyword self, which means we are acting upon the class itself. So we have a couple more attributes or properties, name and breed, and we assign those properties to the value. We can create as many functions as we need, but for time's sake, we're going to create just a simple function to bark. Again, it's going to act on the same blueprint. In this case, when we create an object, the dog is going to bark woof and tell us its name and the breed. So we'll see this in action shortly. Once we're done with our simple class, we can now use that blueprint to create an instance of that class, which is an object. So we'll call that object my dog. We use the dog with a capital D, class, give it a name and a breed. We don't need to give it a self because it's acting on itself. So once we've given it that name and the breed, we have access to all the functions within that class. We only have a single function bark, so we can go ahead and say dog bark, and that's it. Voila. At the end of the day, we should see wolf and Bingo, the German Shepherd. So always make sure you remember self is very important to use within our class. Now on to JavaScript. The same rationale, the same modus operandi, but we're going to use different keywords in this case. So we use a class keyword, obviously, and capitalize the name of the class. Class names are usually nouns. Meanwhile, the names of our functions or methods, that's what they're called when they're within a class, are usually verbs. We use a keyword constructor. Remember, JavaScript uses curly braces while Python uses indentations and spaces. So we use the this keyword in the case of JavaScript instead of the self keyword in Python. Everything else is pretty much the same. We've already seen how you can output or even input in previous videos, check those out. Subscribe to the channel so that you always get notified of new videos that we pop out. So in this case as well, we're going to output the same thing. We just need a few kicks in here to make sure that our concatenation works just fine. And we concatenate all the different properties. The properties or attributes of our object or class in this case. We can use them as simple as we need or as complicated as we want them to be. Alright, so let's get some more real estate. Go ahead and make sure everything looks good, and that should be it. We can create our method for our class and then be able to use that blueprint very shortly. So now that we've gotten our class created, we can use that class to create an object. In this case, we're going to make our object constant, call it my dog. Notice again, in this case, we're using camel case and not snake case as it's recommended in Python. In JavaScript, we use the keyword new. New keyword is used to create a new instance of the dog, and we provide it with a name and a breed. Very similar to what we did before. Calling that method within the class is pretty much the same thing using dot notation. Now for PHP, straightforward, just like JavaScript. But once again, we're going to have different ways we can actually specify modifiers or access modifiers. Class keyword is constant across the board. Capitalization of the name of the class also constant. Curly braces used for JavaScript and PHP, but JavaScript uses the public and private keywords. We use a public keyword to make sure that these variables which are part of the class, now called an attribute of property, are available outside that class. We also use the this keyword in PHP, similar to the this keyword we use in JavaScript. So we use the name, breed. Remember, $ is always used in front of the variable names. In this case, the variable, as I said, is the property since it's tied to a class. Creating a function, we make it public as well, so it's accessible outside the class. We have a couple of functions. The construct keyword, which is used instead of a constructor, instead of an init in JavaScript and Python respectively. We use a pointer when using the this keyword. That might be a simple mistake if you're coming from another language if you don't pay attention. Concatenation, like we've seen before, we use a dot notation to concatenate in PHP. And just like that, we should be good to go. Make sure you remember to add semicolons at the end of each statement. Good. So sometimes you might add end line comments to make sure that your curly braces, you can identify them, or you can use your IDE or code editor to collapse the ones that you don't need to make sure everything is easy. Creating an instance is pretty much the same thing with JavaScript. Just make sure JavaScript uses const and let keywords. We're going to use $ for our objects. And that's about it. Very straightforward. Now that we're done with the simple class, let's do what now? Step it up a notch and get to learn more advanced topics within object-oriented programming for Python, JavaScript, and PHP. So let's check out another class or another set of classes with this. We'll be looking at inheritance, polymorphism, and encapsulation, which is closely tied to abstraction.